Dead bodies lying in the snow, a burning village in the background, and Napoleon Bonaparte gazing at the sky with watery eyes. This painting is called Napoleon on the Battlefield of Eylau and was presented in 1808 to cast a positive perspective on a brutal encounter that fell short of a decisive French victory. At the same time, it became an icon of the emerging style of Romanticism and portrays Napoleon in a never-seen light. Historically, the Battle of Eylau took place on the 7th and 8th of February 1807, during the War of the Fourth Coalition. French forces stood against the main Russian army, as well as a Prussian division. Although the French claimed victory at Eylau, it came at a high cost, with at least 15,000 casualties, while some estimates suggest up to 30,000 just on the French side. The setting of the painting gives an idea of the suffering at Eylau. In the distance, fire consumes the little village, which lies close to Königsberg. Only the church is still intact. The sky is dark, with swirling clouds of smoke rising from the burned-out plain. Fallen soldiers can be seen everywhere. In long rows, the French army gathers and puts itself in formation, and to the right, prisoners are being led away. Napoleon sought to ensure that Eylau would be perceived as a victory, even if it was a costly one. He entrusted the director of the Louvre, Deneau, with commissioning the painting as part of a much larger propaganda campaign. 1 month after the battle, Deneau announced a public competition which the artist Antoine-Jean Gros won with the contribution that we see here in front of us. The painting has a monumental scale, such that most of the central figures could be rendered life-sized. Some of the people on the edges of the painting are intentionally cut off to instill a feeling that the work is an actual fragment of a real-life scene. Notice how densely the people are arranged. Gros was inspired by classical art, and here specifically by the famous Sarcophagus Ludovisi, which had been well known since the 17th century. In this relief, figures fill the entire composition, each carving out its own space and pressing outward toward the edges. At the center of the painting stands Emperor Bonaparte, mounted on a horse, surveying the aftermath of the battle with a consoling expression. Gros masterfully captures the emperor's gesture of mercy, symbolizing his role as a compassionate leader amidst the carnage. He softens the horrors of death and casts his light upon the scene. Some critics even claim this is the most magnificent and true-to-life portrait that has ever been done of Napoleon. In any case, it is also the most disturbing. The eyes roll upwards in a very strange way, with the whites of the eyeballs emphasizing the vacant stare. Most astonishing is the fact that the mighty general refuses to look down at the wounded or at his troops lining up, as if Napoleon himself could no longer bear the toll of war. But why portray Napoleon in such a light? Gros had known the emperor for a long time. For example, he met him after the Battle of Eylau and painted this famous portrait of him. The intent is to show pure heroism and self-confidence. Another painting he delivered during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, and it shows his visit to the plague victims of Jaffa. This picture conveys a very different message. It depicts Napoleon as a person of humanity, caring for his soldiers despite the risk of infection. It was well received by the public, and Napoleon recognized from then on that the good public image could turn defeat into victory, since the Egyptian campaign also had been a failure. The same motive of compassion and humanity is now applied to the painting of the Battle of Eylau. Another purpose of the painting becomes clear when we realize that among all the visible protagonists there are numerous doctors present who take care of the wounded. This was an attempt to allay rumors, grounded in fact, that the medical personnel of the Grande Armée were ill-equipped and demoralized. All the displayed wounded, however, are Russian soldiers and not French. This conveys 3 messages effectively. First, that the Russians have suffered more. Second, that the French have medical resources to spare. And third, it shows Napoleon's mercy and compassion even for the enemy. But the reality looked very different. Napoleon's chief surgeon, Pierre-François Percy, who openly criticized the dire situation, was given a prominent position in this painting behind the Lithuanian hussar. This soldier conveys even more the message that Eylau was a victory. This man points to the emperor with his left arm, while placing his right on his heart to swear his unconditional allegiance to the emperor. The hussar gets his wounded leg treated. Another man reaches out to Napoleon while lying in the snow. And another veteran with a bandaged arm kneels and hugs his leg, ready to kiss the imperial sign in devotion. All of them are taken aback by the emperor's aura. Napoleon is as usual surrounded by his marshals and trusted companions like Berthier, Bessières, Caulaincourt, Soult and Davout. However, the standout figure in this painting is Marshal Murat, who exudes a sense of heroism. Murat is depicted in the center of the chaos, resembling an oriental prince, proudly looking to his comrades while riding a decorated bay horse. His outstanding position is no accident, but a reward for his service. At Eylau, he led one of the greatest cavalry charges in history, with 11,000 mounted soldiers attacking the Russians. Although it did not achieve a clear breakthrough, it stabilized the almost broken center of the French army, and therefore saved the day. Once Antoine-Jean Gros had finished the work, the artist had dreadful misgivings. Had he maybe given too much importance to Murat, to the detriment of the emperor? But what did Napoleon himself think about the painting when he saw it for the first time? Initially, some politicians suspected that the painting aimed to portray the emperor unfavorably. However, as he stood in front of it with the nervous Antoine-Jean Gros by his side, Napoleon took his own decoration of the Legion of Honor from his uniform and pinned it on the painter's chest, awarding him for the great work he had done. How could he ever have accepted such a picture? So many details point to his guilt: the frozen faces, the mutilations, the mass grave. Gros even took impropriety to the point of painting a dead body under the emperor's horse. The desire to distort the official propagandistic line is obvious. Napoleon's approval of this painting is on its first glance incomprehensible. Unless one must accept another, simpler explanation. The memory of Eylau has traumatized Napoleon. He is reported to have said on the occasion that if all the rulers of this earth could see such a spectacle as seen at Eylau, they would be less eager for wars and conquests. And indeed, Napoleon was already 3 years into the campaign, wishing the war to end, and achieved it finally in 1808 with a peace treaty with Russia that ended the War of the Fourth Coalition. In its portrayal of the unpleasant truth of war, Antoine-Jean Gros breaks with the prevailing style of Neoclassicism. It departs from the heroic narrative that surrounds almost every piece of art that emerged during the Napoleonic Wars. And it achieves something very spectacular. It remains in the line of intended propaganda, showcasing a merciful and empathetic Napoleon, while at the same time providing details and hints that point us to the gruesome reality.